Evening, everyone. So, hello, my name is Dundra, and I believe the format, unless Venerable pops in again, I believe the format that we'll be using for the remainder of this module of Discovering Buddhism with Venerable Robina is that the first half an hour will be sort of a group discussion and maybe a meditation on sort of the previous week's class. And then Venerable will join at 7:30 and teach from 7:30 to 9. I believe that's what will happen, but I might be wrong. I've been wrong before. So we'll see. So one couple housekeeping things on the event page, the page that you most likely use to get here on our website, tnlsf.org. There's a link called Course Notes. That's the reading for the course. And so very helpful to be able to go through that. And then also the second thing is if anyone is intending, of course, people can kind of pop in or even just take the whole course for, just kind of their own interest, their own education. It is also possible to receive what's called a certificate of achievement that is all described again on the event page. If someone, if that is what you're interested in, just please send me an email so that we, kind of know who those people are, because there is an exam that that you have to pass. So you just email me at center_manager@tnlsf.org. I'll put that in the chat. But if you think, and you don't have to decide today, but if you think that you might be in that category, it's good that we just know who those folks are. So does anyone, I'm assuming that people were here last week or have watched the recordings. If you happen to miss a class, we do record all of the classes. They're available on our YouTube channel, which you can get to either just by typing in TNLSF on YouTube, or there's a link on our homepage as well. You can get there. So for the folks that were here, did anything stick in your minds as a place for starting a discussion, question, or something that was confusing, or something in maybe, for a lot of things, it's going to make more sense to just ask Venerable Robina when she gets here. But if there was something that we wanted, and this isn't being recorded, so we'll start the recording when Venerable gets here.
Good morning, Venerable Robina. Yes, I did.
Well done. So it must be 9 p.m. for you, same as Singapore, right? Is that right?
No, it is actually 9 a.m.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. Of course.
Same as Bali.
Of course it is. That's exactly right. Good, Afish. I'm happy to see you, darling. I hope it's going well. So everybody, well. Yeah, I'm so glad. So there's Barbara and Caroline and Aaron and Linda, Manuel, Virginie, Victor. Thank you, Venerable Dundra, for being here. And kind Lou. Okay, so let's continue thinking about the meaning of meditation and how to use it in our daily life, and but to get the right meaning of it. Sometimes there's a very, all kinds of meanings of meditation in the world. So it's really important that we get this kind of the proper Buddhist understanding of its use, and even that you're going to find different in different traditions, So here we're talking from the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, and here we're talking from the Gelugpa point of view of our lamas, Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa, how we've learned in our lineage the way to use meditation as a skill to help us become a Buddha, finally. That's the point. So we just do our little refuge prayer as usual. Thank you, Lou. just reminding us that we're reminding ourselves that we're relying upon the Buddha, the Dharma. So I'll say it in English the first time, then we'll sing 2 times in Tibetan. So we're saying, I'll say a bit extra, until we are enlightened, until we become a Buddha, we are going to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, his teachings, and then our spiritual community, the fellow practitioners. And then we're thinking, in the second 2 lines, we're thinking that all the karmic seeds we plant in our mind from listening to these teachings, as a result of this, may I become a Buddha, no matter how long it takes, in order to be of benefit to sentient beings. Sangye Chorang Soke Chognam La Janchu Badu Dagni Kyabsu Chi Dagi Chunyan Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penche Sangye Dropa Shog Sangye Chodan Soke Chognam La Janchu Badu Dagni Kyabsu Chi Dagi Chunyan Gipe Sonam Ki Drola Penche Sangye Dropa Shog. So I sincerely hope you've studied your course notes. These really excellent teachings by, I think, Venerable Dundrup, isn't it? Or is it Sangye Kadro? Let's have a look. Who was it? Sangye Kadro, yes. Hope you've studied her teachings, which she goes into great detail. So the thing I find so important is to get the bigger picture, the overview, to know exactly why are we using a technique called meditation? Because in the world, it's a huge word now. We know that. It's a huge word. Everybody can have their own definition. No one says they can't. Buddha does not own copyright on the word. That's a fact. So from the big picture point of view, where does it fit? This is the thing to understand. From the big picture point of view. Well, the classic approach in the Tibetan Buddhist monastic university system, if you're a monk or a nun, now these days more and more the nuns are doing it too. Because it's within the Vajrayana, it's within the Vajrayana system. I mean, Vajrayana is the final stages of practice, and that's the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva teachings, and then within that is the Hinayana stages of practice. The framework is the Vajrayana. If you look at a Tibetan monastery, you look at a Tibetan Gompa, it's completely Vajrayana. That's the kind of what you see, what you see. All the Buddhas, all that you hear, all the prayers, you hear all the pujas, all of that, almost all of it is from the Vajrayana. So that sort of seeps into your life from the very beginning as a Tibetan Buddhist in Tibet. The little monks, the little nuns, they're going to be the very first thing they're going to be doing in the morning. They get up in the morning, they say the little mantra, the monastery, they run to the Gompa and they do 3 prostrations and they sit down and they're going to say prayers and they're going to visualize the Buddha, and that's Vajrayana. So much is Vajrayana. It pervades the whole of Tibet. That's how it is. But then you think, well, that's puzzling, isn't it? Because the Vajrayana is the most advanced, and yes, indeed it is. So they don't study it until later on. I mean, the ones who are doing geshe, who are becoming a geshe, who are going to do the philosophical studies, which are all by definition the sutra studies, including the Hinayana and the Mahayana, then they would not study the Tantrayana until maybe they become a geshe 30 years later. It's kind of interesting. They would learn and memorize all the prayers and all the pujas. They would do all that. But you wouldn't actually study it until you went to the tantric monastery after you've got your geshe degree. Now, alternatively, for example, at the big monasteries, at some of them, like for example, at Courtin Monastery, our monastery in Kathmandu, established by Lama Yeshe Lama Zopa. More recently, than maybe the last 20, 30 years, there's been a tantric monastery there. So many of the young monks who come, and the same in the other big monasteries, they're chosen to go to the tantric monastery where they become specialists. They become specialists in all the rituals, in all the mandalas, in the fire mandala, in all the sand mandalas. They learn all the complex rituals of all the highest deities. It's a completely different level of education, And of course, this is unique to Tibet. I mean, you do not get that in the Zen monasteries. You do not get that in Thailand. You do not get that in Japan. You don't get that in Taiwan or China. It's only in Tibet. But that's the Tibetan style, But as far as actually learning to concentrate, to learn to do the concentration technique, they mostly wouldn't study that. Their practice in the mornings, and even us as students, when we come into the Dharma, different people have different approach, Some we do our practice in the morning, but it is meditation, but the purpose of much of it is purification and creating merit. So the thing, when we think of meditation, we look at the 2 modes of meditation. We've been talking, as I mentioned last week, the 2 modes of meditation in Buddhism. thousands of techniques, you know. And the first one, which is the usual one in the world that's considered to be meditation, is the one that mindfulness is vaguely based on, is this one that's actually called, as we discussed it last week, I think in depth, it's actually called calm abiding. You know, it's shine in Tibetan and shamatha in Sanskrit. And it's this very specific, powerful psychological skill invented by these Indians well before the Buddha that enables you to get this powerful, subtle level of focus and concentration at levels of mind that we don't even posit in the materialist world, you know, in psychology and neuroscience. So 99% of us won't do that. We won't accomplish that. You need very specific conditions to do that. You know, you got to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You got to go to the mountains. You got to be really stable already in your mind. You know, so if you study and you learn about this in the Lam Rim. So if you study the Lam Rim, you don't get to meditation until you get to the fifth perfection in the Bodhisattva path, you know. So it's a very different approach. Whereas, you know, you ask a person in the West, oh, you know, you're a Buddhist. Oh, you must meditate. So we assume a little technique that you must do that every morning. Otherwise, somehow you're not a Buddhist, you know. So it's a very different approach. But nevertheless, given all that, there are still lots of little techniques. And this is what Sangha Kado's listed, given in her book, little in the course notes, you know, little techniques that we can do every day that can help us in our daily lives. But the long-term benefit, you know, the long-term benefit of getting single point of concentration is so that you can get the subtle level of mind, so that you can do really powerful work in the second mode of meditation, where you get insight, vipassana. But now insight into what? Well, finally, into emptiness. But before that, you need insight into karma, insight into impermanence, insight into bodhicitta, insight into all the stages of the Buddhist path. So the classic way of saying the use of some level of concentration meditation is in order to help your mind be a little bit more stable. So when you do your, you know, as they call it in Tibet, analytical meditations, your meditations in which you think through the various components of the path to enlightenment, you then can think through in a more stable, more focused way, which means the thoughts and the ideas will go more deeply into your being, and you will get some level of reasonable insight into them. That's the proper use of the two modes of meditation, you know. So nevertheless, there's lots of others, you know, we can do. For example, the 9-round breathing meditation. We've been discussing that with our Mahamudra course this weekend. That's a really sweet little technique that all the lamas would recommend that you would do before you do other practices, because it stabilizes your mind. So, you know, we can discuss that one. There's, what are the other ones she does? You know, Sangha Kado in her notes. 9-round breathing. Or for example, one of them, this is the beginnings, I think, of Mahamudra. She calls it clarity of mind. It's the beginning of doing something like Mahamudra. Then there's one that's actually, it's called an analytical meditation, and it's thinking about the benefits of this human rebirth. Then as we know, we've got purification meditation. Then we've got a contemplation meditation on impermanence. And then we have a visualization meditation on Shakyamuni Buddha. In other words, in this little course, she's given examples of different kinds of meditations, you know. So again, let's just remind ourselves of the two kinds of meditation. The first one is the classic one of what's called mindfulness. And I mean, I know there are 47 varieties in the world, and I'm not discussing those. Anyone is allowed to make up their own. No one says they can't. But if you call it Buddhist meditation, you better be more authentic, please. It's rather rude to make up your own and say it's Buddhist. That's a bit lying, you know. And even within Buddhists, if you go to a Thai monastery, you go to a Thai Buddhist center, it's a very different approach, very different approach. You go to a Zen center, a very different approach. You know, so here we're talking again, like I repeat, the Tibetan Buddhist, and within that, we're talking the Gelug. Now, if you go to a Kagyu center, you know, some Kagyu centers, you go straight into doing what they call your preliminary practices. You start doing your prostrations and your water bowls, and you do your visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha, and you do all your mantras, and you might even never study the philosophy. So there's so many differences even within Tibet. And that's why it's very much dependent on the kind of mind you've got, what you do with it all, you know. But the bigger picture, finally, the reason for any of these meditations, finally, is to help you become a Buddha. So what does that mean? That means you have to internalize, listen to, think about, internalize, and eventually get direct experiences of karma, impermanence, the realms of existence, bodhicitta, love, compassion, blah, 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 and then all the 6 perfections, and then emptiness. That's the purpose of being a Buddhist. So the purpose, and the job of being a Buddhist, the actual job of being a Buddhist is not sitting down and watching your breath. The job of being a Buddhist is not sitting down and so-called meditating. The job of being a Buddhist is not to wear robes. The job of being a Buddhist is not to say mantra. The job, the actual central job of being a Buddhist is to change your mind from delusions to virtue. I promise you, that is it. So any technique that you do in Buddhism, including a prostration, a mantra, living in vows, meditating on your breath, whatever the technique might be, if it helps you lessen your delusions and grow your virtues, then it's a valid Buddhist technique. If it doesn't, it's a load of rubbish and chuck it out. If we don't understand this, we get totally confused, you know. Now, that clearly is not the view of a person down the road who's learned about a particular meditation technique from some little new age person. I'm not criticizing. People can think what they like. But we need to understand properly the purpose, you know, of why you would sit down and do a so-called formal meditation technique. And remember, see, this is my main concern. We can touch on these techniques. I want you to read Sangakada's notes, but this is the point, you know. We can get too tunnel vision when it comes to meditation. Oh, I had a really good meditation this morning. Well, what do you think happened? You felt good. Well, excuse me, you might feel even better eating ice cream. Go for the ice cream. It's much more fun. Feeling good is not the purpose of meditation. Calming down is not the purpose of meditation. Watching your breath is not the purpose of meditation. Relaxing is not the purpose of meditation. The purpose of meditation, whatever method it is to help you, 1, lessen the neuroses, lessen the delusions, and 2, grow the virtues. That is it, I promise. So if you remember that, then it'll make sense to you, whatever you do. Otherwise, you get too neurotic. Like some people like to concentrate. They get good at concentration. Oh, I'm a Buddhist, I concentrate. Well, concentration is not even a virtue. Watching your breath is not in its nature a virtue at all. But to remember these things, get a bigger picture, you know, it's important. And depending on the person. I mean, I can tell you when I first met the Dharma and I heard Lama Zopa teaching the Lamrim, I was totally confused, but I knew I belonged there. Then I'd hear Lama Yeshe talk. And then we'd have to do our sessions of meditation. Frankly, I even took empowerments, I did other things, but I did not sit on my bottom with my eyes closed and my legs crossed, I would say, for several years. It was the most absurd idea to me to sit down and try and sit still. What a stupid idea. I was not interested. But I tell you, I was interested in working on my mind. So I did it while I was walking and talking and driving and on the toilet. You can do it, your mind's working all the time. So you work at your mind according to your capacity. You work at your mind according to what's necessary for you. So for example, one of my friends, she said if she has a problem, the only way she can deal with it is do the classic Buddhist one, the Tibetan one, of sitting down, get some focus, go to the second mode and do her analysis and think through her problem in meditation on her cushion. I did not do that. I did not do that. Everyone's different. Everybody's different. So where some people are shocked because if you don't sit on your bottom with your legs crossed, people even think you're not a Buddhist. It's like it's such a cliched idea. I can't stress that enough, you know. We're all different. The fundamental point is if you're working on your mind, you're lessening your delusions, you're growing your virtues, that defines you as a Buddhist. And whatever techniques you use, if they enhance that, go for it. Somebody might do 100,000 meditation prostrations and get way further than someone else working on watching their breath for 30 to 37 years, you know. So this is also helpful to understand. It's important to understand that, you know, another way of putting what you're doing as a Buddhist, another way of putting it is this is my analogy of gardens. You're pulling out the weeds, that is to say, called purification, and you're growing the flowers. That is to say, you're quote unquote creating merit. That's a very specific Buddhist, I'd say Tibetan, probably coming from the Vajrayana, or maybe not, maybe from India, not sure, way of putting it. So if every practice you do, whatever practice you do, it would need to help you purify your mind, which is another way of saying lessening delusions. And another thing it should do, and another way of saying grow the virtues, is to create merit. So whatever thing you do, it should be helping you do that. So one whole way of dividing all the practices is into those that are specifically purification and those that are specifically merit creating. That's how they talk. So if we understand that properly, psychologically, not in a superstitious religious way, then we will know which meditation practices we need to do. We will know that. We'll learn that. Another thing to think about, and this is very specific to the Vajrayana and the Mahayana. You know, you might not have much good concentration, let's say, but you just say you do a 5-minute meditation, let's say, of visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha. You know, let's say, you know, at Thupten Nobiling here at the center, Matt, he leads that once a week, and he always does that meditation. He does a little guided meditation of visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha, by definition, Buddha behind me, is Sutrayana teachings, which means also the Bodhisattva, but it's the aspect of the Buddha that's to subdue the body, speech, and mind. I mean, look at it, that's what it means, as opposed to Tara, who's blissful and radiant, a naked green lady, who's completely different because she's in the Vajrayana. But even just doing a simple little meditation with a few prayers and a mantra and a few aspirations, not sitting there wordlessly watching your breath, that is also a meditation, and that will be called the second mode of meditation. It's the second mode where you're trying to get insight. Or even you could argue, not so much getting insight, it is that, but you're purifying your mind. But the thing is, in the Tibetan tradition, particularly, any meditation you do, any practice you do that involves the Buddha, visualizing, thinking about, is 1 billion times more powerful for your mind, insofar as it puts atomic bombs under the delusions, meaning it's a really brilliant purification practice, and it's a very powerful practice for creating merit as well, which is why the Tibetan tradition, always they're the meditations that are emphasized, you know. I don't even think they do much like watching their breath in Tibet. That doesn't even come much into the Tibetan tradition at all. You do the 9-round breathing meditation. The watching the breath one is it's a Buddhist technique. I'm not arguing. That's particularly, I think, in the Thai tradition, in the Theravadan tradition. I think so. So there's many different ways and styles, you know. Nevertheless, given all this, it's still brilliant to do some kind of concentration. Whether you use your mind and you focus on the clarity of your mind, which is the beginning of Mahamudra technique, like Sanghakarta discusses that, or whether you watch your breath, which is the concentration meditation. It's marvelous to start the day with that. Even if you do 5 minutes of getting out of your head, consciously deciding, and that's what you're doing by focusing on your breath. What you're doing is deciding, I won't follow my thoughts. That's what you're doing, actually. You're anchoring your mind to one thing, in that case, the breath. And what you're really training yourself to do is not absorb mindlessly into all the countless thoughts, which is how we tend to spend our lives, you know. And that, even though you don't get concentration, even though the thoughts are completely crazy, may even sound like you're getting worse, even though you don't relax and it's quite difficult work, it's still fantastic to do that, because the key thing you bring from that is in your daily life, because you're practicing not absorbing into your thoughts, you can't help but hear the thoughts in your back of your head. While you're watching the breath, you can't believe this never stopping rubbish, isn't it? It's very fascinating. Well, that's what's happening all the time. But when you start to do your breathing meditation for 5 minutes in the morning, let's say, your mind is chaotic, you even think you're getting worse. No, you're noticing your thoughts, and don't ever think that's a bad sign. That's a good sign. Because in the daytime, when your thoughts are berserk, at least now you're learning the skill from sitting in the morning to step out of your head while you're doing the dishes, while you're driving in the car. Whereas normally you'll be absorbed in the car and the driving and the anxiety, never noticing it. You'd be absorbed in doing the dishes and angry about your hubby, but you don't notice it. Now you're noticing. And this is good. I think this is one of the major misconceptions about meditation, concentration meditation. Of course, the long-term goal is to literally go beyond conception. There's no doubt about it. But what we've got to understand is, part of the process of a daily Buddhist practice, you've got to know what's going on in your mind, because your job is to identify all the delusions, become intimately familiar with them, hear their conceptual stories, realize how they're painful, realize how they cause you suffering, realize how they have no basis in reality, and learn to argue with them and grow the virtuous thoughts. That is really what you're doing as a Buddhist. If you can sit there, watch your breath, and feel very nice for 5 minutes every day, but don't do anything during the day, you're completely wasting your time. It's just wasting your time. You're becoming an idiot. We've got to understand that. But we have this deep impulse to think, oh, my thoughts are terrible. My thoughts don't go away. I had a bad meditation. Completely and totally mistaken. I can't stress that enough. Because finally, we need to become intimately familiar with all the thoughts and feelings and emotions. Why should you? It's like the analogy of a garden again. The goal is to get rid of the weeds. You can't say it's not. The goal is in the long term to get rid of all the negative thoughts. You can't say it's not. Definitely that's the goal. So to start thinking, I've got to get rid of all the negative thoughts and make them all go away, go away, go away, go away, you'll go crazy. You start doing your garden, which is already overrun with weeds, and you're frantically trying to pull them out and go crazy, you'll get very depressed. You've got to become familiar with the weeds. You've got to know what the hell the weeds are, how they function, what they do, what their nature is, how they cause the destruction of the garden. Then you can learn to be more skillful. So we have to understand the mind deeply. That's why we study low rig, so we can unpack, deconstruct the misconceptions, understand how they're misconceptions, not just make them all go away. I mean, this is beyond naive to think that. It's superstitious, in fact. So anyway, never mind. Let's just do the 9-round breathing meditation. We can just start with some little technique, okay? Because definitely it can help our minds. It can help us calm down and relax a bit and get a bit optimistic, you know? So let's just get your body comfy. You know, the ideal position, I always repeat this all the time. It's good to hear it. His Holiness Dalai Lama says it's perfect, it's ideal to start your meditation session in what they call the full lotus position, which is this each instep on the other thigh. That's the position of the greatest yogis who can stay in that position for days and weeks and months, literally without toppling over. And when we take the Vajrayana level, where all the subtle, they talk about the subtler physical energies and the subtler level of our mind, everything's aligned very nicely in that position. So His Holiness says, even if you can't do it properly, to even start your session just for a second in that position is very auspicious for, you know, just to put the imprint in the mind for our ability to do it in the more advanced meditations, if we can. If not that, one instep on the thigh. If not that, regular cross-legged. If not that, sit in a chair. But if we're in a chair now, don't slump into the back. You need to hold yourself upright, just like you would if you're meditating. If you were in cross-legged, you'd have to be holding yourself up, otherwise you'd topple over, wouldn't you? So sit upright and have your feet firmly planted on the ground. First thing. Next one, if you are sitting cross-legged, you have to adjust yourself to your legs, how flexible you are, what kind of cushion you have, you know. But ideally, the coccyx should be raised up slightly, so you're slightly thrust forward. That's how you'd be if you're on a cushion. Your hands in the meditation mudra, there's many of those. The classic one we learn is like this: left underneath, right on top, thumbs touching like this in your lap. There's others as well. And your arms not tight against your body, loose out. The next one's your shoulders. They all say to have your shoulders square, not slumped, square, upright, but relaxed. And I add an extra point here. If we sit upright, we tense our muscles. So consciously sit upright. Now, flop your muscles. Don't slump the body. That's really important. Flop the muscles. The abdomen, the shoulders, but keep the body upright. That's the good combination. We're either tense, upright, or we flop. And then we get too relaxed, and then all the subtler physical energies can't flow smoothly, and we'll go to sleep, you know, it's no good. So body upright, but muscles relaxed. The shoulders square, but relaxed. And then finally, your head. All the yogis have found, this is the best position, slightly tilted forward, chin tucked in, jaw relaxed, lips slightly apart, tip of the tongue behind the top teeth that stops you from dribbling or swallowing the spit all the time. Tip of the tongue behind the top teeth, just near the palate. Breathe through your nose. And your eyes looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground. Now, all the great yogis who've got very good meditation, concentration, because they've gone beyond their senses when they're subtle, they don't get distracted. So they have their eyes wide open because they meditate day and night, you know. And if you're meditating in the day, if you have your eyes open, the light can come in, which can help your mind stay very sharp. But they don't get distracted because they've got subtle concentration. But for us who haven't got it, it's probably distracting. So don't open your eyes, but have your eyes looking down, as if you're looking along your nose towards the ground, and maybe have them slightly open, you know, You work out what's best, because the only reason to have them slightly open is that the light come in. Otherwise, you go to sleep, you know. So now settle into this position and then forget about it, because your body doesn't meditate. I can't stress this enough, because we're all addicted to our bodies. We make our body the boss. As Lama Yeshe says, we make the mistake of thinking because we feel comfortable, we think it's a good meditation. That is beyond absurd, okay? Nothing to do with your body. So we just do this very simple version of the 9-round breathing. It's one technique that often the lamas would say you start the day with to get the energies to be sort of balanced, your wind energy balanced. And because according to the Vajrayana model, our subtle wind energies that flow through our body in our subtle nervous system are all connected to our different states of mind. So when your mind's very agitated, like anxiety is, and the wind energies are berserk. When you're angry, I mean, the wind energies are berserk because they're connected. So if you use your breath to steady your mind during the 9-round breathing, as well as adding to it this visualization, trying to calm down the 3 poisons, it can help you both calm the mind down a little bit and the wind energies together. So it's using the 3 poisons: aversion, ignorance, the root delusion, attachment, and aversion, anger. So we start with attachment. So 3 lots of 3 breaths. 3 lots of 3 breaths. We do them at our own pace. So the first one, when you breathe out, you breathe out. You breathe out through your left nostril. All your attachment energy. Attachment is like attachment, dissatisfaction, emotional hunger, neediness, always wanting something more, always thinking about something, always thinking about the future, possessiveness, expectation. All of that is attachment. So imagine completely breathing that out, like happily with our mind, being so happy to breathe out, and we visualize like yucky smoke all going out the left nostril, and we imagine it's that attachment energy disappearing into space. First lot out. Then you breathe in, and immediately you breathe in all the opposite energy from the universe, from all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas, whatever you like, all the goodness and the non-attachment. You breathe it in like blissful white light through your right nostril. You breathe it in, and it goes down all the way inside you, and it drives out the attachment energy through the left nostril. So it sort of flows nicely. You breathe in the blissful white light of all the non-attachment energy of all the holy beings, and it comes inside you, and it drives out the yucky smoke of the attachment energy disappearing. 3 times that one. Then the opposite. 3 times out of the left nostril is your anger energy, your aversion, anger, agitated, criticism, finding fault, annoyed, irritated, frustrated, and then despair and depression. There's a whole spectrum of aversion. All that energy disappearing completely through your left nostril. Completely gone. Or is it the right one? I got confused now. No, through the right one. Yeah, that's right. The attachment goes out through the left. Aversion goes out through the right. So it goes out through the right, yucky smoke, and then you breathe in through the left, all the blissful, non-aversion, non-angry energy of the Buddhas in through your left nostril, goes down inside you and drives out the yucky smoke of the aversion through the right nostril. 3 times that one. Then the third lot is both, and that's the ignorance is the root delusion, but kind of one aspect of it is indifference, uncaring, kind of a narrow-mindedness. So all of that energy out through both, yucky smoke into space. And then in is all the wisdom energy, the wisdom of all the holy beings, the blissful light filling you. So out through the left, attachment. Out through the right, aversion. Out through both, ignorance. Just at your own pace, thinking this, delighting in this, and imagining it. Nice, steady, complete breaths. Not loud, not forced. And if you forget what you're doing, just start again. A few times at your own pace. And stay focused and just space out. Stay focused on each in and out, thinking, wanting, aspiring for this ridding of attachment, the ridding of the aversion, the ridding of the ignorance. Okay, relax. Just a few minutes is enough. Give the taste. It's just a taste of that one, okay? So let me now talk about how, you'd have one session in which you would do both modes of meditation. The classic kind of first one will be you get your concentration, then you go to the second mode, and the goal is to get the penny to drop, to get the insight into whatever topic it is you're trying to study. This is really what this really is a way to study. Meditation is a way to study. Honestly, it's like that. I mean, the thing, as you know, in Tibetan, they call it analytical meditation. Analytical meditation. Well, that's just a fancy word, a fancy term, for saying to think about something. Now, when we say think about something, we know we're thinking all day and we go crazy, don't we? Because it's not logical thinking. It's just irrational, berserk, uncontrolled, emotional thinking. Well, that's not useful. What we're trying to do here is get some focus in one session. Let's say you've just been to a class about karma. You've taken notes, let's say, or let's say you've got your course notes. A typical meditation session in the evening when you go home after your class, a way to internalize that information. You could sit there, and just like you would do any homework, you could sit there with a pencil and a pen or your computer and go through it and think about it and analyze it and write something down. Or you could, and this is the classic way to do it in meditation, you'd get your concentration first. You do 5 minutes of steadying your mind. Maybe you'd even do 9-round breathing. Then you bit of breathing, just watching the breath. Then when your mind's a little bit steady, you would stop that. You would go to the second mode, and then because you haven't memorized it all, I mean, these Tibetans, they memorize everything. We don't do that. You'd have your course notes in front of you. Let's say you've just heard about the 4 opponent powers and you don't remember what those 4 are. Well, what do? What do you think you do? It's just a way of studying it. So if you got your fairly focused mind, you'd open your eyes and you'd think through the first one. Well, regret. What's regret? Regret is not guilt. Regret is this. Regret is that. And then you'd take that thought, you'd close your eyes and you'd kind of taste it. Not spaced out. You think it through. That's analytical meditation. Remember, the word in Tibetan, meditation, actually means familiarizing, to familiarize. So you're familiarizing your mind with some thoughts. So in other words, it's coherent, focused, intelligent thinking. That is what you're doing in the second mode. So what'll happen is you maybe do the thinking about karma, and then something, kind of an insight comes. You get it, you get the meaning. You would stop the analysis and you would just focus on that flavor, that taste you just got, that little insight. That's how you would combine the 2 modes of meditation in one session, You go back and forth between the 2. You get some concentration. You go to the second one, you think it through, your mind wanders, you go back to the first again, back and forth. Or when you get the insight, you use the focus, not on your breath this time, but on that insight. And of course, the more subtle your concentration, the more profound your insights. This is how you realize emptiness, finally. So contrary to what most people think about meditation, it is, the modes of meditation in the second lot are using thinking. This is a shocking surprise to us. We're so convinced that meditation is not thinking, That's the first mode. Yes. Definitely. Mahamudra, definitely. Watching the breath, definitely. Non-discursive. But the second mode, you use the ability for the mind to be discursive in an intelligent, coherent way to trigger insights. The visualization techniques, which are very powerful, just because by virtue of just visualizing the Buddha, thinking about the Buddha, imagining the Buddha, they are also totally analytical meditation, but they're visualizing instead. And in the West, we love those techniques, which is great. I mean, they're very nice. You're using your creative imagination, basically. But they're called analysis, but it's visual, visual. The ones we do every morning at TNL. 7 o'clock. The one I do, for example, I like to do is blessing the speech. It's completely intellectual. It's completely just, you're concentrating, you're imagining. You do Shakyamuni, you're concentrating, you're imagining, you're visualizing light coming. They're very tasty meditations and very beneficial. So delicious for the mind, They're uplifting. You do Tara. You're feeling a bit depressed. You visualize this gorgeous green lady who is representing kind of action energy. Then you visualize receiving the blessings. You say her mantra, and then you visualize her absorbing into you, and you become Tara. There's such delicious meditations, and they're completely using your concepts. Don't think they're not. Plus visualizing, using our creative imagination. They are marvelous techniques, because if the point is to lessen delusions and grow the virtues, and having a meditation for 30 minutes where you're only thinking virtuous thoughts, what an amazing 30 minutes. What a marvelous 30 minutes, even if you're not very concentrated, doesn't matter. But 30 minutes to imagine purifying all your delusions, and then to visualize receiving all the blessings and becoming a Buddha. What an incredible way to think, because no thoughts go astray. They'll stay in your mind. You're programming your mind. It's a cause for becoming that in the future. It's not just wishful thinking. These are marvelous meditations. The visualization ones, much more powerful, purification-wise and merit-wise. You can watch your breath for 4 million years, and you can create as much merit with the flick of a finger, doing these meditations, using the Buddha. Okay, we've got to think about that. Logically, it doesn't make sense to us. But all the lamas would say, any meditation where you bring in the Buddha, where you're thinking about the Buddha, you're visualizing the Buddha, incredibly beneficial for the mind. This is very much a Tibetan Buddhist one. That is not a Thai Buddhist. That is not a Zen Buddhist. This is Tibetan Buddhist. So that's why we have to find the systems that work for us, isn't it? And we're the boss there, we decide. Excuse me. Are there any questions?
I have a question in the chat.
Good, Lou. Please, what is it? Can't hear you. You've suddenly disappeared, Lou. Lou, you've disappeared. Unmute, Lou. I can't hear you. There we go. Mute. I still can't hear you. Mute. Lou, you're still muted.
My machine's getting slow.
There you go.
Barbara,
Go on.
Barbara wants to ask a question.
Okay, go. Who?
Barbara.
Okay, good, Barbara. Talk to me. Where's Barbara? Hello, Barbara. Talk to me. You have to unmute yourself, sweetie. Unmute yourself, babe.
Hi, thank you.
Hello. Thank you.
I had asked this question before, so it's been in the chat, and it's not necessarily related to what you were just teaching us.
Okay.
But my question is can you explain how the concept of mind in Buddhism relates to chronic mental illness or something like dementia? And is it assumed that there is always some capacity to meditate and hope for like doing that weed pulling and planting of the flowers?
I understand it. It's a really good point, Barbara. Thank you so, so much. So, okay, the bigger picture, Barbara, we can hear from what Buddha's telling us that to the degree that any of us, which is a completely normal world, have attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, all the rest, they are actually, he would say, I think the term they use in Buddhist psychology is the word affliction, mental afflictions, which is sort of a very dramatic term. But a better I would say a translation that suits us modern people would quite literally be mental illness, which sounds very shocking because mental illness usually for us is a very heavy duty label to have, isn't it, Barbara? I mean, if someone accuses you of being mentally ill, you'd be very upset. But if we think about the Buddhist approach, he's telling us that just attachment, anger, all these ordinary emotions that we consider are normal parts of a normal person are really seriously very suffering. And I think if we look at some people who've got them very deeply without even calling them mentally ill, we can see that a lot of people have a lot of problems. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you? That's normal, kind of like normal, ordinary daily life, up and down like a yo-yo, depressed, angry. We can see it's totally normal human behavior. So then, of course, in our culture, we've got what we call serious mental illness. And absolutely, totally agree. Some people are extremely mentally ill, totally living in la-la land, hallucinating, living in conspiracy theories, completely paranoid. We can see some people's suffering is incredible, isn't it? There's no doubt about it. Or then you've got the other aspect, which is, as you mentioned, dementia, things like that. So all of this is the mind. Absolutely. Everything is the mind. And so you can say one aspect of it is like the dementia one, the Alzheimer's one, is particular parts of the mind that make us function properly, like good memory, they call it discrimination, they call it concentration, they call it all these different qualities. They're the ones that have gone. The person might be still quite relaxed and friendly, or might be still angry and jealous, but their main suffering is that the mechanical parts of their mind, if you like, my term for it, they've gone, they've lost the plot. That's very specific kind, isn't it? So that's definitely mental. So the parts of the mind that make us function every day, that remember what we're doing, know where we're going, don't lose the plot, they're crucial pieces of our mind. We can see that. And lots of people lose those. So I would suggest with those going, I mean, one of my sisters, her husband, he literally forgets second by second what he's just done. But he's quite friendly, quite easygoing. You wouldn't know by looking at him. He's not distressed in any way. So there's nothing he can do. There's no way. The mechanical part of his mind is gone. All you got to do is protect him and look after him so he doesn't harm himself. You understand my point? There's very little you can do there. Now, the other kind, let's say you're really crazy, really paranoid, completely mentally broken down, hallucinating, like lots of us have mental breakdowns, then I would say nothing much during that period you can do. But you need to have support, be taken care of, maybe take some pills so you can begin to heal. So we have to know how severe it is. I mean, the crucial thing in both cases, which is what's so tragic sometimes, you need support, you need good people, good support system, good friends who can protect us from ourselves. You understand? But some people, certainly, we all know, we can see, you can have lots of depression and anxiety, terrible things happen. We can heal ourselves. But, the Buddhist one, of course, is totally about healing yourself. That's the whole approach in Buddhism, being your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe puts it. And we can see very clearly many people are just not capable. They need to be supported and encouraged and helped. And maybe one day they can do that, It's not impossible. It's all the question of the degree, but it's all the mind for sure, and it's due to past karma as well, of course, which is the Buddhist view. Are we understanding, Barbara? You're communicating.
Yes, I can't thank you enough for answering this question for me. I'm in a support position right now, and I have been in the past.
Yes.
And I'm looking to fortify myself and another person.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
But let me tell you one more thing from the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, a very powerful way to help people who are suffering badly, including Alzheimer's or craziness. And this is something we've got to think about. All the Buddhists, especially the Tibetans, would say that just hearing, a sound of a prayer, hearing a mantra that, say, represents compassion, this can be, for your animals as well, could be an incredibly beneficial thing to do to help people's minds. And you can speak to them for 1,000 hours, it won't help, but let them hear a sweet prayer, immediately can calm their pain, calm their emotional suffering down. That's a really good thing to do, even for your animals, day and night. Have them hear mantras, have blessings. It puts a deep imprint in their mind and can help healing sometimes.
Thank you so much, Venerable Robina.
Good, Barbara. But if you're taking care of other people, Barbara, you need to be strong and clear yourself, And that means you just, often the anxiety, I don't know whoever you're helping, but probably as a helper, often, especially if it's family, we have so much anxiety because we think we've got to make them better. Don't think that. You just got to be there like a rock of Gibraltar, supporting them, loving them, making them feel calm. Just by seeing you, if they can feel calm, that's a miracle, Barbara. You're doing so much good for people. You understand? It's amazing. Yes, Aaron.
So my question is, what type of meditation is reciting sutras and writing them?
I understand. So technically, if we think of these two modes of meditation, it's not concentration. I mean, you would use concentration to do it. If you've got concentration, you could argue it's a sort of like an analytical one. Or, I mean, you could say that, but technically, no, because technically an analytical meditation, which is in the insight division, you'd get some concentration first, then you go to the second mode and you would take the teachings you've listened to and you kind of try to taste the meaning of them. You'd think it through in your mind. That's a more classic analytical. Or another type of analytical will be you visualize the Buddha, you visualize the nectar coming, you visualize purifying. That would be an analytical or an insight meditation. But these ones are also technically meditation insofar as you're programming your mind with reciting and listening to the Buddha's words. So, I mean, it has the same kind of effect of blessing your mind, purifying the mind, and making the mind meritorious. Absolutely. Do you understand?
Yes, I do. One quick follow-up question. Would it change also based on the sutra we're going through?
What change?
Like what it does, for example?
Oh, I think definitely. I think in a more subtle way, definitely. Yes, definitely. I mean, some sutras are really good for realizing emptiness. Some sutras are really good for thinking about impermanence. So they've got their own function. They're all pretty esoteric to us, but if that's their function, that can, I mean, just by reciting the Heart Sutra can definitely help trigger an insight into emptiness. Definitely. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Good, Aaron. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay. So we can also see the other the function, again, using the same modes of meditation, concentration and insight, that we all have in our tradition. We do this every evening, don't we, at 9 p.m., is a purification practice. That's a really classic kind of analytical meditation. And it's a powerful technique. And that's the thing that because we're so addicted in the West to thinking that meditation is not conceptual, it just doesn't make any sense to us to think you close your eyes and basically use your creative imagination. In other words, by doing these thinkings, they're basically thinkings in a more formal way. It makes it go in a bit deeper, you know. It just, because if you've got your eyes closed, you're on a bit of focus and you're really trying to focus on it and think it through, especially if you're being led in the meditation. People like that a lot. It really helps the mind stay very focused. If you're just reading it yourself, it's easy to get distracted. I think in the West, a common way that we meditate is by having guided meditations. They don't have such a thing in Tibet. There's no such thing. They don't have it. They recite lots of prayers and pujas together. They recite them, they chant them, but they don't have one person up there leading a meditation. That's unique to white people, or maybe now Black people and Asian people in the Western culture. I mean, Western culture. That's utterly unique. It's very interesting, that, isn't it? We love guided meditations. We love guided meditations, or most people do, you know. So that's why we have them, and they're so successful. Because it's just easier to sit there and it's easier to focus if you just sit there with your eyes closed and someone's leading you through the thinking. It's very excellent, actually. These are very effective meditations. And the point about the purification one, so this is where it really comes down to the Buddhist understanding of the way the mind works, that literally, and the view of karma. When we understand the view of karma, these kinds of meditations completely make sense. For us in our modern world, psychologically, we think just thinking through something, just imagining purifying, imagining, you know, regretting, it doesn't make much sense. It's a bit sort of superficial, a bit sort of superstitious, because I don't think we value the mind in this way. Whereas the Buddhist one, every thought you have sows seeds in your mind is super important. So the more precise you can be in having positive thoughts, the more powerful that practice will be. So the purification practice, you know, the 4 opponent powers, you first contemplate regret. You think of today, you think of the things you've done to harm others. You then think of the different actions in this life you want to think about, you remember them. And then you say to yourself, Robina, I regret having done this because I know I don't want the future suffering that will come from these seeds I've planted in my mind. You're talking to yourself like you're being your own friend, this practice. You really regret because you don't want future suffering, not guilt, not neurotic. You regret having done it out of your ignorance. You didn't know any better at the time. And you know you don't want those seeds to plant, to ripen in the future. So you strongly regret. You think of the things you've done in past lives. You imagine the killing I've done, all the stealing I've done. I regret having done that because I do not want the future suffering. These are incredibly powerful thoughts to have. These are like mind-bogglingly powerful thoughts to have. Instead of guilty, I'm bad, neurotic, which we spend all our day doing. These are focused, positive, optimistic thoughts. They're amazing. Then you think, well, whom can I turn to? Where's my doctor? So you go to the next step, reliance. So the first part is you rely upon the Buddha. You visualize Vajrasattva or whatever, and you delight that you found a nice Buddha to rely upon like a doctor. You take refuge. The second part, you now think of those you've harmed. You now regret for their sake. You have compassion for those you've harmed. These are really powerful meditations because you're engaging very consciously, very intentionally in very positive thoughts. I mean, this is stupendous. You know, even if you haven't got much concentration, doesn't matter, I tell you. You're sincerely talking yourself through things, which is marvelous, you know. Then the third step, you do the remedy. You now visualize nectar. You now say the mantra. Now, this to us sounds like just superstition. What's the point of just visualizing nectar coming from the Buddha? What's the point of saying these Sanskrit words like it means nothing? But as Lama Zopa says, you know, this is really interesting for us. It's the power of your visualization, the power of your imagining the nectar coming from the Buddha. You're imagining the Buddha. Buddha's not doing anything. I promise you, you are doing it. You are thinking it. You visualize the Buddha. You imagine nectar coming. You imagine filling you completely. You imagine purifying all the imprints of all the harm you've done with your bodies and just the yucky smoke disappearing into space. This is powerful thinking. Do not think it is not. Your mind, as Lama Yeshe says, your mind is what creates negativity. So it's your mind that purifies it by creating positivity. So you do the work. You do. These meditations are stupendously powerful. You can watch your breath for 1,000,000 years, you know, but this is powerful. The more we understand karma, the more we understand how our mind creates everything, the more this makes sense, you know. And then finally, you do the fourth step, the resolve to change. Like your bad mouthing is, you know, maybe you reiterate your vows. I will never kill again. I will never steal. I will never lie. It's not just wishful thinking. You've taken those vows. So every day you say, I will never kill. You're reiterating, you're strengthening that vow. You're deepening that groove in your mind. I mean, Lama Zopa says we are insane not to do this meditation at the end of every day. So the point of this meditation, this is again where the two things, if we're addicted to the idea of meditation, and this is one of the big ones we've got the mistake about, we're addicted to meditation as being a quick fix to make me feel better now. Or I must meditate, I feel bad. That's very strongly what we feel. Nothing wrong with that. It can be. If you're really feeling anxious, sit down and do the 9-round breathing. It can steady you. Nothing wrong with that. But the real point, the more we understand karma, that every thought we have sows seeds in the mind that produces the person we become, then these purification practices, the sincerity now, the decisions you make, the regret you have, the compassion you have, they're immediate. But really what you're doing is programming yourself for the future. It's like incredible practice, turning yourself into this marvelous future person, because the person we are today is the person we created yesterday and the day before and in the past life. This takes a while to hear, but this is the karmic view. We are our own creators. So there's huge benefit, both short-term and long-term, in these types of meditations, where you're using some concentration, but you're really using your thinking. You're imagining, you're thinking, making a very positive, focused, positive thinking. They're very, very powerful. Talk about positive thinking. I mean, Buddha's your best positive thinker on the planet, I tell you. Then the ones from the Vajrayana, like visualizing Tara, you first imagine, or Chenrezig, let's say. Chenrezig, the Tibetan term for the Sanskrit Avalokitesvara. It means, I think Lama Zopa translates it as compassionate-eyed one, the Buddha of compassion. So if, you know, you visualize this Buddha and you visualize light coming and you imagine developing compassion. I mean, how incredible. For 5 minutes to just think about wanting to be compassionate. That's the most astonishing thing you could ever do. These are unbelievably powerful, immediately powerful meditations, you know, just to think of compassion, to think I want others to be happy. You know, there's a little kind of verse prayer that you can treat as a meditation called the 4 immeasurable thoughts. You sit down in focus, you focus. Then you go to the second mode and you recite these amazing 4 immeasurable thoughts. So let's just do it right now as a meditation. Let's just do it. Just close your eyes and just think how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, hatred, and ignorance. May they abide so. So the next point is, the next thought is this confidence of the Bodhisattva, the confidence, the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva. I will make this happen. And then, it's implicit that we'd have the Buddha in front of us. So we visualize the Buddha. So now we say, please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. It's the first immeasurable thought, equanimity. Now, the second one, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness, especially the happiness of enlightenment. And its causes. May they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings would never be parted from higher rebirths and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. Now, basically, that's a prayer, isn't it? That's what we mean by a prayer. But because you're doing it with more focus, like you want to do some concentration first, and your mind's settled, and then you say these thoughts to yourself with such meaning, such sincerity. And of course, the stronger your meaning, the stronger your sincerity, the deeper they will go into your mind, and the deeper the effect it will have. So that's technically a meditation. Why not, You're familiarizing your mind with compassion. That's what meditation here means, not just concentrating. So always to do these things with more focus, instead of having a room full of busy people all shouting and yelling, then of course your mind's more distracted. So it always helps to do it in a more formal way, and to say these thoughts meaningfully to yourself. This is so powerful. Yeah. What else, people? Any questions? No. So again, to summarize, the first mode of meditation, which in the long term we do need to get. We were talking the weekend as Lama Yeshe's Mahamudra book, to realize finally the insight, the Vipassana, that we need to accomplish in order to cut the root of all suffering and to begin to achieve liberation, is to quote unquote realize emptiness. That's the subtlest thing we have to get insight into. So clear, as Lama Yeshe says in his book, in order to get that insight, you cannot get that insight until you have accomplished what they call calm abiding. In fact, to get any insights genuinely into the depths of your mind, you need shamatha, you need concentration. So, of course, most of us in this life will not get it. That doesn't mean there's not benefit. But if you really want to get somewhere, you've got to spend a couple of years in the mountains, get your concentration, and then come back every day and do your work and do your practice. Your mind will be radically changed in a radically more profound way. So it's all the key to success. In other words, the broad idea is the key to success in internalizing all this information is concentration. So of course we need it. And this often gets a bit of an agonizing choices for people, People hear the lamas say, well, you can't get far unless you've got shine, unless you've got concentration. Then you think, well, I better go off and get it. But this is what's interesting. And maybe I'd like to talk to you about this, a little bit first from the Lam Rim. We talked last week, I think, about just the way you'd get a little bit discussing this concentration technique, how you're trying to bring the mind between the two extremes of the mind being overexcited or the mind being very dull. And the actual development of this concentration, which is described in terms of 9 stages, is a gradual diminishing of the excitement, a gradual diminishing of the dullness, until eventually you've gone beyond mindfulness, you've gone beyond alertness, and now you've got this subtle, single-pointed concentration at quite a subtle level of mind. That's when this amazing, flexible, extraordinarily capable level of mind that can quickly get insight into all the different points of the path, like impermanence, karma, emptiness, etc., etc., etc. That's the ideal. But as I said, 99% of us won't do that. That doesn't mean there's not benefit. We do it according to our capacity, And so just to qualify, to get to, to even be ready to go to the mountains, metaphorically, but literally usually, to actually begin to seriously get single-pointed concentration, you're already a really advanced person. I mean, often I quote this, when I interviewed years ago in Mandalay, 25 years ago, I interviewed Venerable Rene, this wonderful Swiss monk, one of our monks, who did a 2.5-year concentration meditation retreat. So if you think about this, look at our mind, look at how our minds, first of all, most of us could not do that because we have, like, look at, like, for example, Barbara's taking care of human beings. There's no way in the universe you can go to the mountains. Most of us have mortgages, husbands, dogs, families, jobs, responsibilities. It's just literally not possible in our lives to give it all up and disappear to the mountains. In general, for most of us. So we do what we can every day. No question, no doubt. But if you do decide to go off and do retreat, then think about it. It's very logical. You've got to be almost so qualified first. I mean, try and imagine walking away now. Just think of what you need to have together as far as your conditions of your life are concerned to turn your back after the session. Don't look back, walk out the door and keep walking up to the mountain. Look at how many conditions you'd have to have together physically and mentally to be qualified to do that with a happy mind, so that you can sit down in a quiet little place. Yes, it can be comfortable for 1, 2, 3 years to get single point of concentration. That itself is already implying a very advanced person. So as Bhavan Rinpoche says in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, there are various prerequisites you need in order to even be ready to go to the mountains. You've got to first, for example, have no other responsibilities. You've got to be very content with anything you have, very, very contented personality. You can eat any food that's there, no worry. You'd have a mind that is not worried about the children, the husband, the mortgage, the this, the food, the worries, the body, the house, the this, the blah, the 97 million things we all have to think about. You'd have none of that in your mind, because obviously if you've got those in your mind, how can you possibly concentrate? That's why we can't concentrate. Our minds are full of our responsibilities. This is not criticizing us. It's just showing to get the conditions that are appropriate to be able to get to the mountains, to do 2, 3 or more years. That's pretty advanced already. You've got to really make that happen, You've got to be completely content. Don't care about your clothes. No thinking about what people think about you. No responsibilities. It sounds almost lazy for us in our culture. It sounds kind of weird. It sounds selfish almost, doesn't it? And then be prepared to work immensely hard with enormous effort to go against the powerful tendency of the mind to go chat, to get it to become subdued. It's very powerful, And he said, Rene said he maybe got to the 5th of the 9 stages of this technique. And he knew, and he at that time, he knew he couldn't get further at that time, So it demands immense, and that's to get this concentration. Like I said, most of us won't get it in this life, which doesn't mean we still can't do it every day and try and get some level of focus, some level of, clarity, so then we can begin to do the daily work of seeing our mind and working with ourselves and helping others, etc. So again, the long term, there's the long term and the short term. We need to, for our daily lives, for example, say we don't have any commitments to do any particular practices. So good to choose a particular practice in the morning that will suit you for that day. Maybe your mind's a bit agitated, you do the 9-round breathing. Maybe your mind is you want to keep it calm, so you just watch your breath. Maybe maybe you want to do a 10 raising meditation for some compassion. Maybe you want to sit there and just do some Tara mantras, because Tara is like this kind of energy, action, confidence, courage, cut through the obstacles. Maybe you want to do some purification. So you choose these little kind of recipes in your little recipe book of practices that suit your mind at that time. So there is the immediate benefit, but also the real one to never forget is the long-term benefit. You're programming your mind in these different things. So you be patient and humble and not be greedily demanding immediate results. I remember reading about meeting one guy at a course. He was almost in tears. He did a particular kind of meditation. And he said, for 25 years, I've been waiting for experiences to come. He was so stressed out. I mean, that's demented, you can't be that way. Craving for an experience. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. I can tell you countless stories of people I've met, who, for example, must have some karma from the past of having meditated, who then start and get some blissful experience, or are able to concentrate very clearly and very subtly. But because they haven't worked on their minds, they've done no work on their minds, they don't know anything about attachment or aversion or arrogance, they lose their brain completely. They think they're God, they think they're enlightened, they become greedy because they get so much bliss. I mean, you can really go crazy if you don't understand, if you don't do all the appropriate work first, and know what you're doing and why you're doing these practices from the long-term point of view. What else does Sangha Cadre say? Anyway, so good you're hearing me chat away, but I really keep wanting you to read this course notes, please. Her teachings are very, very helpful. Any other questions, people? Because I'm running out of words as usual. Sorry. 8:15 at my time in Santa Fe. Any more questions? Anything in the chat, Lou?
Nothing in the chat.
All right. Okay. Any questions, people? Yes, Ginny. Talk to me, sweetheart.
I would love to go to the mountains and be able to do that. But I kind of feel like I might be too old now. But I am very excited about the Laudo
trek. Good. You come.
I don't know if is that the same thing as like you have to turn your back on everything and you have to?
Well, it's only 15 days, Ginny. It's all right. I mean, yes, we turn our back for 15 days, but I mean, we'll go to Courtin for a couple of days. We do a bit of meditation, then we get the flight to Lukla, and then we start climbing. We walk 4 days. We walk about 3 or 4 hours every day. And those of us who don't want to walk, including me, I walked the first one. I nearly killed myself. I tell you, I never walk up mountains in my whole life. So it was the biggest shock in the universe to me, walking up in this rarefied thin air. So luckily there are 4 days of walking. So those of us who want can get a helicopter from each of the points and we can meet the others at the hotel. So the oldies or the lazy ones like me, we can do that. The ones who walk really love the walking, but it is really hard work. You do make effort, there's no doubt. 3 to 4 hours a day. Then we have a rest in the afternoon and have dinner and teachings. Then we start again. And then we'll do 4 days or maybe 5 days of that. The 5th day, we spend 2 days in Namche Bazaar, acclimatizing, and then we do the final walk, which is really intense, up to Laudo itself, and then we spend 5 days up there doing a retreat, and then we fly, then we walk down. That's it. So it's a marvelous experience, and there are quite a few oldies like me, you know. So, but it's hard work because you've got to, the effort of just making your body take one step in front of the other is really definitely effort, you know. But we kind of like did meditations every day, and we sort of enthused ourselves and kind of, you know, there's a way of doing it with sort of enthusiasm and knowing there's a benefit to it because you're going up the mountain, you're going to do some meditating, and we're going to raise money for Laudo. So it's a wonderful experience. The air's quite thin up there. So you kind of got to adjust to it and walk slowly and things. But in general, people really loved it. Love it every year. So you must come, okay? October. Good. Okay. And that's interesting. Talking about the mountains is another whole thing about meditation. Some of our friends have spent years up in those places, up in their own caves, little houses. And they all say, and the Tibetans all say this too, that high up in the mountain, not only physically is it more pristine, but spiritually much more pristine. You're able to get realizations much more quickly. That's what they say. So it's encouraging, isn't it? Good. What else, dear people? What else? I don't have to cheat you on your time, but I'm going to have to cheat you. I think I'm going to leave now. Anybody else? Cynthia, nothing. Susanna, David, Afisha, Monica. Nothing, don't have to. I'm just asking. Like, do Venerable Jundra? I've done my job.
I have a question.
Who is there?
Cynthia.
Hello, Cynthia, sweetheart. Happy to see you.
Oh,
yes.
Thank you so much for everything you do for us.
Good, darling. Good.
And where is this retreat that Ginger was talking about? Where it is?
Yeah, Laudo Trek. You should look on the website. Can you look? Can you get it there on the website and put it in Lou? Can you put it on in the chat box, please? Laudo Trek. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Lou? LAWUDO Trek. And put it in the chat box. It's in October, sweetheart. We're doing it in October. 15 days, starting in Kathmandu, and then 15 days in total. Can you see it there, Trek, Lou? Laudo Trek. Lou? Can you find it, dear?
He put it in. He did.
Okay, good. There it is. Oh, Jundrup did it. There it is. So have a look at it, sweetheart, and come.
Thank you so very much.
Good. Yes, Aaron.
So I have ADHD, and I was wondering if there was any advice you can give on kind of how to focus on, like, what kind of, I guess, expectation should I have for developing my concentration?
What's the first sentence you said?
I have ADHD, and I was wondering if you had any,
well,
like...
the Buddha would say everybody's got it. You know, I'm not being sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just busy mind, right? Mm-hmm. That's called attachment energy, Aaron. And that also comes along often with very intelligent people. And you're very intelligent and you've got a busy mind. You think about a lot of things, so you can't focus. This concentration technique is exactly for that. We've all got variations of it, you know, and it's not kidding. We really have. It's very, that's why we find it so common now, but we've sort of discovered a new label for it. But the Buddha would call it a busy mind, a distracted mind. And it's never stopping, you know. So really, concentration is a really good one to try, the concentration technique, but also the purification, the 9-round breathing, and also just doing other things like doing mantras can purify your mind, can steady your mind. So if you can't watch the breath, just focus on saying Om Mani Padme Hum or something, but, you know, and just slowly practicing. And then the more you catch your mind every day, you know, the more you just kind of don't force, but just lots of little practices can help. But the classic concentration one is exactly for that purpose. That's what it's for. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any practice that you do at the moment?
I do. I currently always recite the Heart Sutra at least once a day.
Wow, marvelous, wonderful.
And then I'm actually coming in from the Tendai tradition, so I kind of still do the Nimbutsu.
Wonderful, lovely, wonderful.
And I also do Vajrasattva purification.
Perfect. See, these are the things that work at kind of, the purification one kind of works at a subtler level that before you realize it, suddenly you'll find your mind can concentrate. They work at a deeper level, kind of cleaning up the muck deep down, you know. So have a patient view. They overtly might not help you concentrate, but they have a deeper function of purifying the mind. So when you do your breathing and when you do your whatever the focus is, you'll be able to begin to do it better, you know.
Okay.
You understand, Aaron?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Good. All right, darling people, I think it's enough. Thank you, everybody, so much. But please read Sangakato's notes, and please do a little of the few of the practices yourself, and think about it. And did you do anything today before I started, Dondrup? No.
Do you want us to start that before 7, or
what did we do today? Anything?
No, I thought that we would start that at 7, but
start what?
Have like a discussion group from 7 to 7:30.
Oh, no, I thought normally we've got 2 hours in the calendar, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I've finished an hour. I finished. Oh, I see. Oh, I didn't understand. I'm sorry. Yeah, so yeah, we could do that 7 o'clock, and then I'd come at 7:30. So we didn't do it. So never mind. Don't you worry. But maybe next week we can give it a try. So we start the session at 7, and Dundrit will go over things a little bit kind of just together, and you do a couple of techniques and you have some discussion. I'd really like you to do that together. And then I'll come along at 7:30. That's a good idea, Dundrit. Thank you very, very much for that. Thank you, dearest people. Thank you so much, everybody. Barbara, everybody, so much, everybody. Aaron, thank you, Cynthia, Ginger. Goodbye, sweethearts. Next week. Bye-bye.